we going to have to project?
Hit the switch on the, there's a switch on the microphone. Flip it up.
Oh yeah.
Can you hear? Oh,
yes.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you guys so much. Can we get one more round of applause for all of you? We hope you enjoyed them, and we're now going to go into a Q&A. So we'd like to invite any of the filmmakers who are present to...
Oh, there's Jamal here,
Jamal.
who's very comfortable right now, pulling you out of recline. Yeah, we're just gonna, wrap a little bit about the films. Any questions that you have for Jamal or about any of the other films? Happy to try and represent and answer as best I can as to why these films were chosen. And so yeah, Jamal.
Do you want to start by just telling us your name, your role, the film, and what the experience was like?
Absolutely. Just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here to partake in our stories. So I'm the director of House of AAMA, Threads of Legacy, featuring Rebecca Henry and Akua Shabaka. This film was made in 4 days over the course of a year, and it was an honor to just document their journey. I was really inspired by them, just their relationship as mother and daughter, and how they work together to tell stories through fashion. And with me is my sound designer and mixer, Ebenezer.
Hey guys, thanks for being here. My name is Ebenezer. Had the wonderful honor of doing the sound for Jamal's film, House of AAMA, Threads of Legacy. Amazing film, and one that reminds me that I have an impulse, and that is an African theme. Wherever we find ourselves, in the diaspora, in the Caribbean, back home, it's just a beautiful thing to see that continuing through the people. Yeah.
Just to ask you one question about the film. How did you find them? How did you find each other to even know about this story, and how did it all take shape?
Yes, so LA is if you're black and creative, it's a very small place. And I had the good fortune to meet Akuya. She came to one of my screenings for another film that I made called Who Should I Be in the World? And I just was very enamored with her and her work, and thought maybe we could work together on something. So the opportunity came up to do this project, and I reached out to her, and she, gracefully said yes. So, thank you. It was great.
And because there's been a lot of in and out throughout the screening today, so I'm not sure how many of you did see the film. It was the first one in the block. You used a lot of footage in the film as well, that I am assuming came from her. Could you talk more about that, about how you decided what footage to use and where you got it all from?
Absolutely. So the process, I wanted to take a mixed media approach, and use archive and use some of her own social media posts and videos and things of that nature, just to kind of let her tell her, her story, her journey of working with her mother, and then some of the more elaborate scenes and the visual effects. I collaborated with Ebenezer to kind of I read an article Akuya did with Vogue magazine about her most empowered self, which is when she wore her hair natural, and we wanted to kind of create this otherworldly opening using Afro braids to kind of tell that story of feeling self-actualized and your most embodied self as a black woman. And I'd love for you to talk about some of the sound design, the beautiful sound design of that scene, that moment.
Yeah, I remember the conversations we were having and the temp you sent me, from that music video, and just after several conversations, I realized, and so there's an interesting thing that happens between the hours of 3 and 5 in the morning. I don't know if anybody figured that out yet. That's when so this is true. So when you have to get into a certain flow state, you have to go into a certain time and space of the day to do it. I can't do that kind of work at 12 in the afternoon. Can't. So that's, I was staying up. Yeah. But one of the interesting things about the design is we spoke about it. You talked about the roots and being grounded, right? Being grounded, and it's interesting. The way I move through the world, where I'm at. Sometimes some of these films some of these projects come in and out depending on the season that I'm in, and that was a very interesting. And I'm still going through that season of being in the US now 7.5 years. I'm going through a season where I'm being reconnected to my foundations, to what does it mean to be African? What does it mean to be Nigerian, And it's so beautiful that I get to channel some of that energy of who we are through sound and through film, so.
I gotta ask this because just thinking about roots, you didn't have a lot of animation in the film, but there is one very striking image, which is actually the sort of poster image that we've used for marketing the film. And also, by the way, there's a lot of stickers for all of the films that you saw that are available for free when you're exiting. But that scene where their hair crosses the screen in locks together, you could talk about the decision to do that, who did that for you, and how that might have affected your decisions for sound for that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Barrett. I think in all my work, I'm always trying to find a unique, innovative way to approach, visual story. And then this is like documentary. Sometimes documentaries can kind of be boring, just talking heads. So we had a lot of them just telling their story, talking to the camera, but we wanted to take a more metaphysical, abstract approach with that scene. And when Akuya was talking about her hair and her mother, and just how she always used to straighten her hair, and I remember she said she went to school and she always felt othered, and just feeling like she was talking about wearing volleys and Afro braids and what that meant to her. So I just asked her, hey, what do you think about this idea of like trying to do something different with that opening? And as far as the visual effects, and there's no AI in that moment. It's all like handcrafted. I worked with Simon Mowbray, who's an amazing visual effects artist. I wish he could be here. And we collaborated for months on trying to figure out, well, Anansi, the spider, was like a folkloric tale that Rebecca and Akuya was a foundation of a lot of their work in their archives and the fashion. So we were trying to figure out, well, how can we do that with braids? How can we kind of have that imagery in the shape of the Afro braids? And it was great to collaborate with Ebenezer just to figure out what it's going to look like a spider, and then it's also going to be allegory for the roots of a tree. What does that sound like? And it was great to kind of figure that out.
If I could just give a little context, Anansi is a folklore trickster figure in a lot of Caribbean folklore stories, sort of representing, necessary code switching for survival, tricking Massa or Master on the field so that you could access more resources, to evade punishment, to make fun of circumstances without them knowing. And Anansi kind of represents that trickster strategy. So, just for that context.
And just to go off of what the two of you just said, we had that phone call, and the first pass of the design, I had leaned more into what Anansi is, and Jamal then course corrected me and said, no, we don't want, because I grew up around women who were, I mean, strong, powerful women with just amazing braids all the time, right? And to me, I didn't see it as anything evil or anything, you know, but I didn't realize that perspective until we started having this conversation. And this is something that is so natural to me, but, you know, we're about to put this thing on the screen, you know, and so Jamal was able to guide and tell us that, okay, we want this to really feel like a part of, rooted in our identity. And what does that feel like? And, you know, the source material, the sounds that we chose to kind of represent that and make people see that this really is a beautiful part of our identity and who we are.
Yeah, you know, it's funny working with, this one to say, Simon is a older queer white man who did visual effects, and I wish he could be here, but he was so concerned about being a white man doing visual effects and wanting to just honor Black women and their beauty and their braids. And during that creative process of the design, we were trying to find a space of like, it was like, it's gonna be like a spider, but he was like, we don't want it to look scary, you know, and we wanted to find a nice balance of, you know, I just kept trying to push it towards it being elegant and for him to be like at peace of just even taking on the project, because he really wanted to do it justice, but I think he succeeded, so.
I think he succeeded too, and that's the thing about allyship, right? It's like knowing, you know, how to enter the space and how to honor it. So yeah, because it was an elegant image, and it's a very elegant image on the stickers you're gonna pick up when you go out. As we're standing here with our braids.
So I had a question for you. That's cool. So the curation of these films, we make a way and back again. How did you decide which films you wanted to curate together? And I know you spoke about it a little bit earlier. Can you go more into depth about just why you chose the specific films and the through line and the thread and what it means for you?
Wow, that's a tall one. Well, anything that I'm curating or making as an artist is informed by being a multi-immigrant and wanting to honor the multitudes of that reality, right? I've had a few passports in my life, had to adjust to different communities and cultures over the course of my life, and so there's always rebuilding, rerouting, trying not to forget roots, reconnecting, and also building bridges where you don't expect to, right? And so in my curation, I'm trying to find filmmakers that are doing that. There is a filmmaker here who is the director of the opening night film Over the Bridge, Tolulope, who is sitting in the audience. I was going to call you up here. We were talking yesterday about, responding to some of the talks about what it means to make a work that is universal versus specific, right? And I was saying, well, this is the rule of the theater. You go universal, you're speaking to no one, but you go specific and you're speaking to everyone, right? And so that also informed this, is being as specific as possible to the human experience through diasporic stories. So we're seeing a lot of trauma, we're seeing grief, we're seeing spiritual honoring and reclamation, we're seeing grieving rights, right? We're seeing so many different things that are indicative of the human experience, but they're super specific to these cultures. And I feel like that is the best love letter that I can write to my diasporic siblings, is to show that specificity, but to show the humanity all together, conversing together from one film to the next.
Beautiful.
So I'd love to welcome any questions that you may have. If you have any questions about Jamal's film or any of the other films that you saw, I'm happy to answer, because as you see, we don't have all the filmmakers here. But I'm happy to answer anything that you might have thought of. Yes?
Hello everyone, my name is Isa Kenyatta. Thank you so much for showing the films, all the films today. My biggest question is, how do you choose your projects, and how do you know something is really inspired to make a project going?
Thank you so much for that amazing question. How do you choose your projects? Like, I think your projects kind of choose you. I don't think you choose them. Like, so this particular project, like the universe, like, so I had pitched this to like PBS like a year ago, and I had a different idea altogether for like a different artist, and didn't work out with that other artist. And then I talked to Akuya, and then, you know, actually, hey, you're interested? And then, you know, it kind of grew and blossomed. And another project that I'm working on, I thought it would be a short film, and shot a proof of concept, and that grew, and there was a bigger story there. So you kind of just have to like surrender to whatever the universe is kind of pushing you towards, and that's always kind of, I've learned to kind of just ease into that and not try to force particular things. So.
Not to add to that, because I can't add to that, but I've heard someone say that we don't choose our passions choose us. That's just kind of a blanket statement in response to what you're saying. We don't choose our projects choose us, right? In life, you're not trying to get, you're trying to receive, right? Just.
Anyone else have questions?
Yes. Hi.
Tolu.
Hey, this is Tolu, amazing director.
Amazing director.
You know, so just one thing I was really thinking about. I've got like a little bit towards the end, so I'm going to ask you for a screener. But there's a real event there was a fashion show that was going to happen. So were you co-creating with? Did they have control over the story? Because it's being their story, were you also shaping the story along with them? And you know, how did you? Because there's a documentary element to what I'm seeing, and how much control did you have for that aspect?
Thanks, Tolu. Great question. So I have no control over the fashion show. The approach was simply they were going to do this Fashion Week story and show, and I just wanted to capture verite. So we had the DP follow them for a few days while they were preparing for the show and the day of the show. And they did not really have any editorial control. You know, I wanted it to feel like this is what's actually happening in that moment.
Any other questions? Okay.
So we can go and eat food now.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please keep up with Black Cinema Collective at Black Cinema Collective on Instagram. You can check out our website at www.blackcinemacollective.org. And as I said, we have stickers that you can pick up. And we also have another program tonight at 7:15 or 7 p.m. Dilly Dark, which is filmed from India about a Nigerian immigrant who moves to Delhi. It is quite the action-packed dark comedy. I highly recommend that you come, and the director, Dibakar Das Roy, will be here for a Q&A after that film as well. And of course, keep up with everything else that's going on with the festival throughout the afternoon and tomorrow as well. Thank you so much for being with us.